So, well, hello everyone. Yeah, please help yourself to tea and coffee. Grab a couple of biscuits. I'm Alistair Flint. I recognise a lot of people here, but I'm the current owner of Arthur Beale. With the shop being so historic, perhaps curator might be a better word rather than owner. I expect a lot of you know the little shop in central London. Actually, it's not so little. Let's just see if I can move the slide on, which I can't do at the moment. There we go. It's 5 floors high, and the basement actually goes down under Shaftesbury Avenue. Now, I'm no academic historian, so some of my facts might not pass close scrutiny. Nevertheless, I hope I can tell you an interesting tale based on a mix of facts, and when I can't find facts, there'll be kind of a bit of rumor and speculation thrown in. So, so who are we? Next slide, please. Our business card describes us as London's yacht chandler. 10 years ago, there were half a dozen yacht chandlers in the centre of London, but now only a couple exist. People often come into the shop and ask, what on earth is a yacht chandler doing in the centre of the West End? But of course, we were there long before the West End. So that brings me to the other tagline on the card, which says, established 400 years. Well, it's all lies. Let's start looking at this date. The old sign outside the shop says established 4 centuries, but actually the sign is 60 years old. So that would bring us back to 1560. Grace's Guide to British Industrial History says that Arthur Beale was founded in 1500. So we're probably 500 years old, not 400 years old. So yeah, how time flies. Either way, a 400 or a 500-year-old yacht chandler seems a bit unlikely. In fact, the first yacht was probably named after the Dutch fast navy ships called yachts or yachts, which were used to chase pirates. Charles II chose one of these vessels to carry him back to England for his restoration in 1660. So this is probably the first British yacht. And you can see he's sensibly got the bowsprit raised to avoid those extortionate marina fees. So it was impossible that Arthur Beale was a yacht chandler in 1500. So I told you it was all lies. And indeed, the company wasn't even called Arthur Beale. So what's going on? In the early days, the company was called John Buckingham, after its founder. It's pretty hard to track down information about the company during this period. The 16th century connections of John Buckingham were tracked by Arthur Beale Jr. via the Chamber of Commerce in Holborn. And there was apparently a box full of paperwork, which was indeed seen by Una Ferns, who's Arthur Beale's daughter. And we've got no reason to doubt her, but sadly, the Chamber of Commerce in Holborn no longer exists. So what is rather surprising for a company so old is that Arthur Beale hasn't moved far from its original spot for 400 or 500 years. So what was Shaftesbury Avenue like back then? Here you can see Charing Cross and the Strand. And then we've got Drury Lane And then up here, St Giles Church, just where it is today. And this is the spot where Arthur Beale is situated now. This map of 1560 shows that the area is quite rural. These are kind of proper maps, aren't they? Not like those rubbish road maps you get nowadays. These really kind of tell you a lot of things, pictures of pigs and things. This is a panorama of 1543. Shows a fair amount of activity on the Thames with rural fields behind the Strand and the arrow pointing to St Giles Church. And this map depicts the area in 1570 and shows Broad St Giles that later became known as Broad Street. Take note of all these names of the streets because they get fairly confusing. Now, I can't be sure what was grown in all of these fields, but possibly it was this. I don't know if we've got anyone here from Northern Ireland or Belarus, because this is the emblem of Northern Ireland and Belarus, and it's the flax plant. Grows in most types of soil and it likes open sunlight. In the 1500s, flax was grown to the north of London. Elizabeth I encouraged it by stating, "For the better provision of making nets and for the furtherance of fishing and to eschewing of idleness." By the end of the 16th century, Britain was using vast quantities of flax for manufacturing sails for the Navy. The burgeoning demand was outstripping the local supply. Tudor governments tried to encourage flax growing, and in 1543, they required all farms of 60 acres or more to plant at least a quarter of an acre with linseed. Nevertheless, Britain had to import most of its supplies from Russia and Europe. But why are we talking about flax? Well, Arthur Beale was originally called John Buckingham, hemp and flax dresser, tow dealer, and rope maker, in that order. So this card of 1791 clearly shows a well-established company. The card is in the British Museum, and I was rather surprised to see that they'd stamped it in the corner. But not to worry, because I've got the original copper plate in my desk. So have a look at the address, number 12, Middle Row, St Giles, near Monmouth Street. I've got some flax samples at my house, which I'd pass around, but unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be an app for doing that yet. Making flax isn't, or making rope from flax isn't particularly straightforward. The first process is to extract the fiber from the flax plant, and to do that, you have to rot away the inner stalk. This is called retting. So this can be done in ponds, streams, or in the case of London, it would be done with the dew in the open fields. So the card mentions John Buckingham as a flax dresser. Now, dressing flax is the process of separating the straw from the fibers. And dressing consists of 3 steps. You have breaking, which breaks up the straw, scutching, where the straw is scraped from the fibers, and heckling, where the fibers are pulled through heckles to tease out the last bits of straw. So heckling, of course, is still carried on in the area, but mainly in the local comedy clubs. The card also mentions tow dealer. And just in case you're wondering, a tow is a coarse, broken fiber removed during the process of processing flax, hemp or jute. So flax tows are often used as upholstery stuffing, or they're cut up to produce a staple fibre. So this is a flax tow. The very light colour of the flax tow was once the source of the word towhead, which means a person with tousled light blonde hair. Personally, I've never tried calling anyone a towhead, as I'm not quite sure how it would be received. But here are a couple of fine towheads. And oh gosh, look, they seem to be wearing, what a coincidence, they're wearing Arthur Beale's children's smocks. It looks like they're holding an Arthur Beale tumbler and thermal mug. All available in the gift shop en route out. Here's another one of our stock of copper plates. And this one says Buckingham, flax dresser, rope maker and twine spinner, curled hair and hair cloth manufacturer, 33 Broad Street, St Giles, bed sacking and Russia mat warehouse, canvas hessians and webs, horse cloth rug and roller web warehouse. Horse cloth apparently is normally made with a flax warp and a horsehair weft, and it was popular with religious penitents. Note how the address now has changed to 33 Broad Street, which is just over the road from number 12 Middle Row. So we now have firmly established that Arthur Beale's was originally a successful flax dresser and rope maker called John Buckingham. Now, just a quick word about copper plates. You don't want to believe everything you see. The text can actually be changed quite easily on copper plates. So this slide at the top, the plate at the top shows that print on the previous slide. And down below is the back of it, and you'll see punch marks along here and around here where the you can hammer the copper forwards, and then the engraver can grind off the face of the plate and repolish it and then re-engrave it. So this plate here has got Shaftesbury Avenue written on it, but the plate is much, much older than the existence of Shaftesbury Avenue. So just a word of warning, the back of the plates, of course, can tell almost as much as the front. Well, here we go. This is actually a piece of handmade flax hemp that we still sell in the shop. And when you consider all that retting and breaking and scutching and heckling involved before you even start to spin fibres and twist the rope, then a couple of pounds a metre represents pretty good value, especially as Rishi Sunak gets 20%. Fully biodegradable too. Buy it in the gift shop. Now, it's a very common story, and indeed one that I heard when I first started shopping at Arthur Beale, that ships would lie alongside Arthur Beale in the River Fleet to be re-rigged. Now, I pictured the river flowing behind the current shop with ships heeled over in the mud. So there are two big questions which need answering. Did ships really sail up to Arthur Beale to be re-rigged? And how did they make long ropes in what looks like quite small premises? A few years ago, we asked Stephen Myers whether he could help solve these problems. Stephen co-wrote the excellent book, The Lost Rivers of London. Very sadly, I heard the tragic news that Stephen had died of COVID-19 earlier this year. He was a chartered civil engineer specialising in water and wastewater, and he undertook some amazing projects around the world which transformed the lives of many people. The talk that he gave was absolutely fascinating, and we need to credit Stephen for some of the next slides. The first thing that Stephen clearly pointed out was that the River Fleet never flowed anywhere near the shop. So where did the rumour come from? We can see from the slide that Middle Row and Broad Street are clearly within a few yards of where the shop currently stands. With the copper plates as evidence, there's no doubt that the shop was positioned in this area, but there's certainly no sign of the River Fleet. And there's also no sign of an area big enough to make ropes. So what was the area like? The nearby slum rookeries of St Giles were famous for their deprivation. The Great Plague of London started here in 1665. And it's not surprising because the area was squalid and infested with rats. We can also see down here the very first evidence of wheelie bins. Maybe not. A riot broke out in St Giles when the first plague house was sealed up. The crowd broke down the door and released the inhabitants. And it perhaps reminds us of things rather more recent. These are the Manchester University students tearing down the fence erected around their halls of residence on the first day of lockdown. This is Middle Row, St Giles. The first victims of the plague were buried in St Giles churchyard over the road from Arthur Beale, and where we normally hold these talks. That's the church in the background. Thomas Beames, writing in the middle of the 19th century, described the whole area of St Giles as the type of the lowest conditions under which human life is possible, which is similar to the comments the crew make on my boat. There was a cholera outbreak in 1854, and famously John Snow, a physician, mapped the cases in the nearby area and discovered that they were all getting their water from the same street pump. He had the pump handle removed and the cases stopped. And this was the first link between cholera and water contamination. Previously, it was believed to be due to bad air. So perhaps the squalor was why Middle Row St Giles was demolished in 1843 and Broad Street was cleared not that long afterwards. The picture shows Middle Row with the church in the background just prior to demolition. And strangely, it looks like a rather desirable area to me, but maybe the etching was done by the local estate agent. 1877 marked the commencement of the building of Shaftesbury Avenue. Now, it was designed by George Vulliamy and engineered by Sir Joseph Bazalgette. So Shaftesbury Avenue was finally opened in 1886, with our shop pretty much rebuilt where it is today. By the way, Joseph Bazalgette was, of course, the famous engineer who built the embankment and the sewer that saved London from the Great Stink. And Vulliamy designed the lamp posts. I mean, wow, those were the days. I mean, don't get me going on lamp posts. Okay, you got me going. When you've got a dog, you spend a little bit of time around lampposts. And surely in this day of men on the moon, they could design a bloody lamppost with a hatch that stays placed. Never mind, I digress. Feel better now, though. So the period between the demolition of 12 Middle Row, shown on the 1791 card, and the rebuilding of Shaftesbury Avenue lasted for 43 years. And it seems that our shop firstly moved over the road to 33 Broad Street. But we do also have evidence from old court records of John Buckingham living and probably trading in 9 High Holborn, Gray's Inn Road, near Gray's Inn Road. The Post Office Directory of 1841 also records 2 addresses for John Buckingham. So we've got Buckingham John Rope and Twine Spinner, horsehair manufacturer, 6 Middle Row, not 12. That was 2 years before demolition. And then Buckingham John Flax Dresser, rope maker, curled hair and haircloth manufacturer, 9 High Holborn, near Gray's Inn Lane. So perhaps they took on the premises in 9 High Holborn while the demolition and rebuilding works was taking place in Broad Street. So just to summarise all these moves, the shop has been in various addresses, but generally within spitting distance of St Giles Church for around 500 years. The River Fleet never flowed near here. And once the area was developed, it doesn't seem there was enough space to make ropes. So we still need to solve where they actually made the ropes. This picture shows Chatham Rope Walk, who still make some of our natural fibre ropes to this day. The Royal Navy required the ships to anchor with ropes or cables which were 100 fathoms long. This meant that the rope walk, where the ropes were made, needed to be that long plus a bit. So it's very unlikely that these long ropes would have been made in Broad Street. Whether they were making ships' cables or not, they still would have needed a long, clear workshop. Even the flax dressing process would have been very dusty for a built-up area like St Giles. Our premises were bigger than our current shop, but there were no signs of a rope walk. So these are the premises here. So let's revisit that long-standing rumour that Buckingham owned a rope works on the banks of the River Fleet. Stephen Myers located some rope walks fairly nearby the Fleet, but he didn't manage to locate one actually on the banks of the River Fleet. So let's have a look at Stephen Myers' discoveries. You'll often see on maps roads called Rope Walk, Rope Street, or Cable Street, and they're normally signs that ropes were made there on traditional rope walks, often outside. The street would be long and straight. So there were some rope walks fairly near the Fleet. There was one that existed in Moorfield before the 18th century, and there was one at Old Street, Goswell Road, during the 18th century. But whether they were Buckingham owned, we're not sure. However, the good news is that we do have firm evidence of them owning a rope walk in White's Conduits Fields in Islington. Now, this comes from court records of 1821, and it says, on the 16th of September, 6 pounds of hemp, value 2 shillings, the goods of Edward Buckingham. And John Buckingham says, I assist my brother Edward, who is a rope maker and lives in White Conduit Fields. The prisoner lived 4 years on the premises to take care of the property. And then John Allen says, I am a dismounted patrol. I was on the lookout on Sunday morning, the 16th of September, between 5 and 6 o'clock with Charlesworth, and met the prisoner coming down White Lion Street with a basket on his back covered with parsley. I asked him what he had in his basket, and he said, parsley. My partner found 13 banks of hemp under it, and he at last said that he said that he found it and he lived in the rope walk in White's Conduit Field. In the prisoner's defence, he said, I came across the fields and saw this parcel tied in brown paper. I was going out afterwards. I met a person in distress and said, I'd got this hemp if you could make a shilling of it, and appointed to meet him at the Angel Inn with it. He was found guilty, aged 32, and he was transported for 7 years. 2 shillings would be worth about £9 now, so it was a pretty harsh punishment. although thinking about it, being sent to Australia is probably more of a treat nowadays than a punishment. So this is the first mention in writing that we can find of a rope walk belonging to John Buckingham. And it appears on the parish map of 1805, but it doesn't appear, which is the date of the Battle of Trafalgar, of course, but it doesn't appear on the rock map of 1745. Now, the really clever thing about it is that it was actually built in the expectation that the Regent's Canal would get permission to be built, to be completed, because the canal wasn't completed until 1820. So it's perhaps a bit like buying a flat in Woolwich in the hope that Crossrail eventually gets finished. So the top map shows the route of the Regent's Canal, and the lower one appears to show a rope walk not being there by 1885. Now, I've since done a bit of digging around and come up with some more good evidence that we owned a rope factory besides the Regent's Canal. So this map shows a long straight building just where the rope walk was marked on the previous maps. And this looks like a perfect rope factory shape building. Can't be sure it's ours. But if we look at this map of 1860, although it no longer shows the long building, it does show a road named after us. So there you go, Buckingham Street. I've never come across a Force 4 Street or a Marine Store Street yet. So Buckingham Street was still there in 1930, but the silly sods then changed the name to Boadicea Street in 1950. So Battlebridge Basin, its area is called Battlebridge, was thought to be where Boadicea fought the Romans in AD 60, but actually it's fake news. So they changed the name from something that was real into a local myth. It's generally not a good idea to change the names of things, especially the name of boats. Well, I suppose on the other hand, if you lived in Hitler Square, you might have a different thought. This is an A to Z. Don't use those anymore. With a little inset to remind us how the area has changed. That's the rope walk of the fields. And this is the area today. I hope all those narrow boats are tied up with Arthur Beale rope. Looks like some business could be had there. So we've got evidence of a Buckingham rope walk, but it wasn't on the banks of the River Fleet. So was that just a rumour? Were they muddling up the Regent's Canal with the River Fleet? Well, one day I was on an archaeological dig in a bay and discovered something. Yes, the bay was eBay. Didn't manage to buy the card, but there it was. And at the bottom of the card, it states Manufactory, Anglers Lane, Kentish Town. Now, there is no doubt that the fleet ran alongside Anglers Lane. And indeed, an anchor was found once in Kentish Town, which proves that the river was navigable that far upstream. Whether it was navigable at the time when this card was printed, don't know. So, but the rumour may well have been true that Arthur Beale possibly did supply rigging to boats moored outside a factory on the River Fleet. The card also states 9 High Holborn opposite Middle Row. But we've already seen that Middle Row was by St Giles and 9 High Holborn is by Gray's Inn. So what's going on? Well, there are 2 Middle Rows. I mean, this history thing is making me tear my hair out. No wonder I get confused. In any case, let's move on and talk a bit about the ropes that they made. So the first thing to note is that they were good at making ropes. They were probably the best in the country and quite possibly the best in the world. The display in my office shows some of the ropes that John Buckingham made. And this display is definitely dated before 1877 because of the Broad Street Address. So the ropes would have been made in one of the rope walks and not at 33 Broad Street. This is one of the prize medals dated 1862. But we're going to talk more about ropes soon, but it is about time that we introduced the era of Arthur Beale. So far we've established that during the middle of the 19th century, John Buckingham was a very well-established flax dresser and rope maker. They had premises on Broad Street, St Giles, and on High Holborn, and they had a rope walk in Islington, and at some point by the banks of the River Fleet in Kentish Town. So where does the Arthur Beale name come from? 1866, Arthur Beale was born, and we need to refer to him as Arthur Beale Senior, because just like the middle rows, there were two Arthur Beales. When he was 15 years old, he was working as an office boy for John Buckingham, the rope maker. So then a year later, he was registered as a wharf clerk, and in 1901 as a twine horsehair shopkeeper. He married Annie. They had 3 children, Arthur, Leonard, and Eva. And Arthur Beale Jr. was born in 1899. There he is. So the company John Buckingham became known as Beale and Clove, in brackets, late John Buckingham. And then in 1901, that was in 1901, and 2 years later it became known as Arthur Beale, late John Buckingham. And then eventually in 1904, it took on its current name of Arthur Beale. So it's 1904, we're in our existing shop with the same name and about to start on a period of great business. But still no mention of yachts. The rope has now moved to the front of the list. And what do you do with rope? Well, you climb mountains. Arthur Beale not only supplied mountaineers with their rope, but we also supplied their ice axes and rucksacks too. And we were agents for Jaeger Clothing, who went bankrupt today. The turn of the 20th century was a great period for exploring. John Buckingham, in collaboration with the Alpine Club, had already developed a world-famous rope, which was to be called the Alpine Club rope. And it was made from Manila hemp. And I was browsing an old book at home and I came across this statement. It said, the committee of the Alpine Club found in the course of nearly 100 experiments of various kinds of ropes, only 4 bore the strain of a 12-stone man falling 5 feet. And all these 4 ropes were made by Messrs. Buckingham and Sons, 33 Broad Street, Bloomsbury. So that's an extract from Knots, Ties and Splices of 1877. Now, the term Manila hemp is a bit confusing. Because hemp was the main rope-making fibre, it was tagged to other products. So the rope that we were supplying there was actually Manila. So Manila hemp is just Manila, and flax hemp is just flax, and hemp is just hemp. So this label demonstrates that Arthur Beale Jr. had a great flair for design. I'll be coming to that. There's lovely A-B replicated in the rope. So the ropes were of great quality and they won many awards. This is one from Norway. They were sent all over the world. This is a telegram we've got from the famous polar explorer Gino Watkins requesting ropes be sent to Greenland for the British Arctic Air Route expedition. And Gertrude Rusk leaving Copenhagen. So our rope was used on all the early Everest attempts. We supplied Shipton and Tillman on their 1935 reconnaissance. And it was on this expedition that Shipton gave the 19-year-old Tenzing his first opportunity as a porter. So Tenzing would have been using our Manila climbing ropes. We certainly supplied Sir Ernest Shackleton, as we still have the signed delivery note. It's Shackleton's signature. The order was delivered to St. Catherine Docks, and to this day, we still deliver goods to expedition yachts leaving, setting sail from those docks, and we still offer 10% discount. And by the way, this was for ice axes, Alpine Club rope, Neo belays, and we still have some Neo belays in stock. So here's one. The belay itself has a fascinating history. Deserves a talk on its own, really. It could be could have Neo belay pulleys and NAF lampposts of Southwark or something. Shackleton's ice axe, engraved with Arthur Beale's name on it, is in the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich. The axe was made by Simmons in France, but it was clearly branded as Arthur Beale. Edward Whymper used our axes too. But it's interesting that everything was branded. I'll be coming to that. So we've got a lot of correspondence in our archive, general correspondence regarding climbing at the start of the 20th century, including signed letters from Edward Whymper. And he made the first ascent of the Matterhorn. And for those of you who know about the climb, the rope that did not break was the Arthur Beale rope. We also supplied Frank Smythe and George Mallory. And Captain John King Davis, who's most famous for captaining Antarctic exploration ships, and we supplied all his ropes. More recently, Tim Severin was a fan of the shop, and Mr. Coleman, the manager. We supplied all the unusual items that he needed for his many adventures. But it wasn't just explorers that we supplied. There's another more nearby industry that uses a lot of rope. Yep, the theatre industry. Arthur Beale supplied most of the West End theatres and the BBC. So the young Arthur Beale went to school in Clapham College, and for the last 3 years of his education, he was sent to another school in Bruges in Belgium. When World War I broke out, while he was there at the age of 15, he apparently lied about his age and joined the army. The company carried on working on Ministry of Defence projects. And a telegram we've got from the Machine Gun Corps said that Arthur Beale Jr. had been admitted to hospital with severe influenza. So this letter here, 1919, requested that he was relieved of his duties and returned to work at Arthur Beale. Arthur Beale Jr. was a keen rower, and he was an important member of the Vesta Rowing Club, winning a host of cups, and one of which was for the Olympic trials. If I was them, I would choose a smaller cox. So in 1928, he married Catherine Florence Judge, looking very dapper. It's very hard to find a photo of Arthur Beale without a cigarette in his hand. In 1932, their first daughter was born, Una. 2 years later, his father died and left the company to him. Working in the company was a group of ex-sailors doing the splicing and rigging and wire rope strops, and a group of knowledgeable ex-Navy people working in the shop, including the talented Mr. Sims. So this is Mr. Sims from a picture in our basement taken by the Evening Standard. And the basement really hasn't changed at all. In 1936, their second daughter, Celia Beale, was born. Celia's still alive and very well. She's a nun. 1937, Arthur Beale helped out with the breaking of the flag for the coronation of George VI. Mr. Sims actually installed the flag post on the top of Buckingham Palace under Arthur Beale's supervision. So that's the flag post which is used to hoist the royal standard to denote when the Queen is in residence. Indeed, the company was heavily involved with flags. They hired and installed flags for many public occasions, and we still sell a lot of flags. When the Second World War broke out, Arthur Beale didn't have to sign up because of the work they did making the wire strops and rigging for aerial masts on a pretty large scale. So it's only after the Second World War that we begin to see yachting products appear in the Arthur Beale archive. They were a founder member of the Yachting Fellowship of the Rotarians, which formed in 1947. And in 1949, Una, their daughter, starts working for the company at age 17. And things were getting really busy. It was soon to be the coronation of Elizabeth II, and they were supplying bunting and flags, plus they had all their regular contacts with the BBC television and the West End theatres. Arthur Beale was one of the 9 individuals from the newly formed Ship and Boat Builders National Federation who decided to put on a boat show in London. It was held in Olympia in 1952-3, and it was the first London boat show. So now we're describing the company as ship chandlers and nautical ironmongers. So this is a picture of our first stand at the boat show at Olympia. We did move to Earl's Court afterwards, where we all loved it. So meanwhile, the sales of the famous Alpine Club rope were now in decline. They were to be replaced with modern nylon materials. Nylon rope was used for the first time in the Himalayas in 1946. We've got no record of when Arthur Beale stopped manufacturing their own rope, but we do believe the rope walk in White's Conduit Fields was no longer there in 1885. The archives have a contract signed in 1907 by Alderson and Sons, Marshgate, Stratford, to make Alpine Club rope solely for Arthur Beale. So modern ropes were taking over, and the Alpine Club rope would soon be a thing of the past. This is from a climbing catalogue, 1949. And there was actually an advert for Alpine Club rope on the next page. but it was excellent timing to move the company towards supplying yacht and boat fittings. Sadly, Arthur Beale died in 1954, probably too many cigarettes. The company was managed by Mr. Swannell and owned by Power Estates, a company run by Lord Buchan and Sir John Power. The company produced their own catalogue, and they also opened other shops, and they had one in the Hornet, Chichester, and one in Burnham-on-Crouch. We still sell most of these products, and actually we've still got the printing blocks for all of these, all of their catalogues. But boating was really about to take off. The Cadet dinghy was designed in 1947. Arthur Beale's archives have files on many small dinghies describing in fantastic detail all the fittings and lengths of all the ropes and rigging, and even the size and numbers of screws that you'll need to build these boats. But it was the mirror dinghy designed by Jack Holt and the TV do-it-yourself expert Barry Bucknell, who in 1962 transformed boating. So while I was at school, I can remember my friend's father building a mirror dinghy in his garage, and we were able to go sailing during the school holidays. I was soon hooked on sailing, and so were 70,000 other mirror dinghy owners. So with no Google, no online shopping, it must have been a brilliant era to own a boating shop. They were sending out dinghy fittings all over the world. Instead of just being for the rich, the modern boat building techniques opened up dinghy sailing to the middle classes. This is one of our stands. This probably is at Earl's Court. Mr. Coleman was originally the Saturday boy, and he became the manager and eventually the owner in 1995. In 1980, I bought my first yacht as a bit of a wreck, and I can clearly remember buying everything from Arthur Beale, who was my local yacht chandler. Mr. Coleman was extremely helpful, and he gave me a free almanac every year. The company was obviously very profitable, but things gradually changed, or rather, things didn't gradually change. The PC was invented in 1975. The mobile phone was invented in 1983. The web was invented in 1991. To pay my bills, I used to run a specialist supply company to the theatre industry called Flint's Theatrical Chandlers. And early in 2014, I visited Arthur Beale to see if they'd like to stock some of our theatre products. After all, they were perfectly placed right in the middle of the West End. But on arrival, I quickly realised the company was on its last legs. Mr. Coleman had become rather cantankerous, and few people came into the shop. There was virtually no stock, and areas had fallen into disrepair. They had no computers. All the accounts were handwritten. They wouldn't take orders over the phone. They had no website and no email address. And this, bear in mind, this is 6 years ago. So the company had firmly remained in the 60s. They'd already contacted the liquidators, and the company was about to close down. The shop wasn't only loved by sailors, it was also a favourite haunt for London's artists. Richard Wentworth, the renowned artist, curator and teacher, was a great fan of the shop, and he saw the writing on the wall. He rang me to ask if anything could be done to save the company. Jerry Jett, my partner in crime, and myself had to act very quickly, and we decided to risk taking over the company without any due diligence. We didn't want the national treasure to close down. So by the 3rd of April 2014, we had taken over the company. But wow, what on earth had we done? We just signed up to turn around a loss-making chandler on Shaftesbury Avenue, and firstly we had to repay the debts. There was plenty of old stock, but we needed stock items that people would like to buy. This was a project that was going to keep us busy for quite a while. Mr. Coleman stayed on, but he was elderly and becoming more and more ill. He was struggling to get in, and eventually we needed to find him a nursing home. And sadly, he died in 2016. So this is a picture of Mr. Coleman in the shop after it had been restocked. We made up display boards to show off our stock, and we brightened the shop up with flags. We completely renovated the upstairs and opened 2 new showrooms so that we could stock lots of clothes and books. We like to think we've got the best nautical bookshelves in London. We changed the window display several times a year, and everyone seemed to love the shop. We managed to increase the turnover by 75%, but still with ever rising rates and West End rental charges, it was clear that a shop in Shaftesbury Avenue wasn't going to survive just as a shop. So we exhibited at boat shows. This was the London Boat Show when it moved to XL. We produced newsletters. We made up a lively website and introduced the start of a decent online buying shop. And we held regular talks, which were well attended. This is in the vestry hall of St Giles Church, where the plague victims were buried. And we found the National and the Yachting Press were great fans. We took on specialist rigging projects. This is one for Louis Vuitton. We drew up and supplied and set up this massive mast and sails. And we set this up in Paris, Tokyo, Shanghai, Seoul, and New York. The project had to satisfy very stringent fire and safety standards. But we still had to do more to survive. So where to next? Well, we decided that the future of the company lay in the brand. Arthur Beale Jr. certainly recognised this with his great design flair. We found some old rubber stamps in the cupboards with a nice boat logo. One day we decided to stamp the Arthur Beale logo onto a plain canvas bag, and we left it on the counter. And within minutes, it sold. So we've since sold over 1,000 of these bags with our logo stamped on the front. So we gradually introduced more products under the Arthur Beale brand. We used the lovely Arthur Beale boat logo and the Arthur Beale typeface. And we actually believe that our brand could be one of the strongest in the world. Let's just take a look at some other brands. Now, so where is the head office of this company? No, not in Japan. In fact, they've got nothing to do with Japan whatsoever. It's a completely fabricated British brand They don't even really specialise in super dry clothes, yet they turn over 500 million a year. And I know you're probably laughing at the idea of Arthur Beale competing with brands like this, but why not? Sometimes you just have to think big. I mean, here's another one. Where are they based? Well, this brand was developed in San Francisco, and the name was chosen to represent the hardest climb route of a mountain, well, in the Northern Hemisphere. And haven't they done well? I mean, there's nothing wrong with these brands, but Arthur Beale has got real provenance. It's got a fantastic history of genuine exploration and adventure, supplying some of the most famous explorers in the world. So for Arthur Beale to survive, we need to start shouting about it. We're continuing to develop a range of top quality classic seafaring products, which we can also sell to the general public. The Beerenberg old wool pullovers that we introduced a couple of years ago are now selling all over the world. And even the Japanese are buying our smocks. And the great news for this is every Arthur Beale branded product that we sell helps to sell more. It's like a kind of snowball. And even better, we don't have to compete with the likes of Amazon. We've got loads more products in the pipeline. We're bubbling with ideas, and we've got a really, really good team. And the company was running like clockwork, and we were doing so well until COVID-19 arrived. Well, this is Covent Garden during lockdown, not a soul around. This is Friday evening, 6 o'clock. The lack of footfall is not just during these lockdown periods when the shop has to completely shut, but even when the shop's open, we're only allowed to allow 2 or 3 people into the shop due to social distancing rules. In the run up to Christmas, we would normally have 20 people browsing the shop. But now there are no tourists in London and no office workers, and the place is scarily quiet. So the effect of COVID-19 has decimated our shop sales. Now, we were insured against infectious disease, but the insurers are fighting against paying out. And of course, the case is in the High Court right now, in the Supreme Court. The insurer's argument, I think, is that it's going to cost too much to pay out. Our lease expired last year, and obviously the landlords are concerned about the future of the property. There's a sizable tranche of building works that need to be done, and we have to decide if we can afford West End rent with a low footfall. We're still negotiating on that one. So it's pretty grim news, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. During the lockdown period, we decided to invest heavily in a completely new operating system. So we ditched our old website and the point of sale system, and we combined both of them into an all singing, all dancing, cloud-based system. We've added loads more data, more instructions, taken new photographs and videos. And we share our stock levels with you, so you can check if the product is in stock before you visit the shop. So we've got links to our popular Facebook and Instagram accounts. It's still work in progress, but the website just gets better and better. We've obviously got a tough time ahead, but it's not the first plague that Arthur Beale has survived. We will certainly need your help. So please, before you head to Amazon for your shopping, give us a thought, or the future of Arthur Beale could easily be this. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. In the background, we've got Jessica, who's co-hosting this. I need to thank her. Jessica's French, so she's not all that pleased at the moment because Alex Thompson is in the lead of the Alex Thompson's in the lead of the race. But who knows what will happen later on the Vendée Globe. So I don't know if anyone's got any questions. Jessica's?
Yeah, there were quite a few comments throughout the whole talk. There were about 150 people joining us, and I'm sure we'll take some live questions as well. Some of the questions were the beginning I might have missed a little bit because I was doing the participants, but one question was, what is a tow dealer? You might have answered that in the talk.
Yeah, well, I did. As someone who sells tows, of course, but the tow is the flax, the flax fibre, the staple fibre that would then get used, twist up into twine, and then twist again to make rope.
Yeah, cool. Just checking now what we have. Oh, we've had some crowdfunding and shares questions. Someone asking whether we could look into the Myers of London crowdfunding project.
Yeah.
From David Beder.
Yes, well, we are looking into that. We were very pleased to see that Stanford's have had a very successful project crowdfunding. What's it called? Pay forward crowdfunding. And they've raised 120,000, which is a good sizable amount of money, and the kind of money that's needed to survive through until the spring. We're yeah, it is on our agenda to contemplate doing something like that. I can't remember exactly how it works, but I think basically you pay forward, so it's a slight donation, but you get something in return as well. So at Stanford's, for instance, if you donate £5, you can get 5 free cups of coffee, which is actually a pretty good deal. Yeah, and as far as investment goes, we probably will be reinstating an investment campaign, but we have to be very careful legally how we pitch it, because you're not allowed to pitch to the general public, otherwise you contravene all sorts of regulations. So I'm not pitching to anyone out there to join our investment campaign. I am not pitching.
There's a really nice question from John Bowley as well, who used to work at Arthur Beale in the early 2000s. Apparently. All right. They said, I remember spending my breaks looking through the old storerooms. What has been your most surprising find in the old stock?
Oh, gosh. I mean, really, it's hard to pull one out. Everything leads on to something else. And it's interesting how if you break an archive up, it really becomes not understandable any longer. That the Neo Beale pulley, for instance, was just found in the bottom of an old sack. We've got 3 or 4 of them. They're aluminium pulleys, the ones we supplied to Shackleton. And it's only you pick up the pulley and you see Neo Beale written on it, and then you remember you saw the invoice to Shackleton for Neo Beale pulleys, and then you link the two together. And without that link, I mean, the Shackleton invoice by itself, no one's going to know what a Neo Beale was, because all it said on the receipt was Neo Beale. I mean, what is a Neo Beale? But then when you find the pulley, you can link them together, and the whole lot has a kind of meaning. And to be honest, still haven't been through all of the drawers and all of the paperwork. One thing just leads to another. We find things all of the time. What did I last find? I don't know. Sometimes we find strange tools that we don't know what they are, and they're all a mystery. But they're all being looked after in some way or another. Any other questions?
Yeah, there's loads of questions actually. Right. So, what are the plans for the shop in December?
Well, if we're allowed to open, we're hoping to open long hours because we're hoping you're all bursting to get in. We have got a little plan to do something a tag illegal and put a table outside the shop to increase the social distancing. So have a kind of market stall just set up outside the shop. We won't ask permission because by the time the permission comes through, it would be after Christmas, I expect. But we are hoping that from the 3rd of December, we'll be able to open until about 8 o'clock at night, 7 days a week to hopefully satisfy your Christmas shopping needs.
Nick Day, Commodore of Greenwich Yacht Club, is saying that he loves the idea of branded goods, branded metal, long-lasting goods that everyone needs. A knife, for example, at a high Arthur Beale survival fund price that everyone will want to show their loyalty.
Great. Well, thanks, Nick. We are trying with our branded stuff to make sure that it is good quality, apt for use on a boat, but also for for sale to general public. We're pretty keen to be environmentally friendly as well. Our pullovers, for instance, are made without using any bleach or dye. And we even supply them with spare wool so that if you get you need to darn it, you've got the means to do that. So rather than throwing things away, you can mend them and make them last for a long time. We've got a big queue of products that we would like to remake and brand. Yeah, thanks, Nick.
Since you sell hardware, why can't you open click and collect?
Well, we are doing click and collect. I think I suppose you could argue that we're a hardware shop. I think we'd be pushing our luck to I think we are regarded as non-essential, sadly. But if anyone wants anything, phone the shop, they'll get the thing ready, call in and just pick it up.
There's loads of questions. I might miss some, so if people want to maybe sort of join in verbally and unmute themselves, if they have really desperate questions, because I'm not sure we're going to go through all of them. Is there going to be a recording? I believe there will be on the website.
Yeah, this is being recorded, and we will put it. If I can extract it, we will put it on YouTube. So if anyone's missed it and is interested, they'll be able to watch it there.
And there's a couple of questions about what can we do to help, things like that.
Well, the best thing anyone could do to help really is just consider us to buy something. Have a browse through the website. We're really dependent now on web sales to keep us going with the footfall being so small. So yeah, the easiest thing to do would just to see if you can find something you can buy from us and not buy from Amazon. That would help us. It's a fairly critical period right now to get through. Let's just take one more question, and then I think we better close down so everyone can. Okay. Well, you can't get off down the pub, can you? Poor things.
Can I just come in and
yep.
Thank you, Alistair. It's been absolutely fascinating. I don't know if I speak for a lot of people, but there's a tremendous pride in just having that contact and association with you and the company, and to respect all that you've done, the enormous hard work and effort that's gone into this, and the courage that you've displayed to keep this going. And I congratulate you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure everybody else does as well. And thank you so much for keeping going and putting on events like this. It's brilliant. Well done.
Well, Thank you very much, Stephen. Great. No, that's very nice to hear. Very nice to hear. We do have a fantastic loyal support of people out there. We do appreciate it. There's a poll somewhere on your screen. I don't know how it works. We've never done one of these before, but if you see a button that says poll and you fill it in, that would be it might help us for future talks, so we know whether you think it's a bit too long or too short or whatever. But, well, just like to say thank you to everyone for joining us, and thank you, Jessica, for co-hosting and moral support. Helps technically at the beginning. Yeah, hopefully you'll, oh, there's the poll, just come up on my screen. I don't know if it's come up on yours. Yeah, if you could fill in the poll, that would be very helpful. If you've got any other questions, you can just email them through to the shop and we'll sort them out. So thank you very much and good night.